Welcome to Global War in 1939. We just finished up round two, so let's do an overview of each nation and what we are doing. All right, so starting with Germany, they didn't do a lot. All they did was activate Bulgaria. They didn't do any attacks as they're not really prepared for that. Their next biggest target would be Russia. So we're just gearing up. Now, the Russians did move into Finland like I figured they would. And the Finnish is pretty scarce. So we're going to have to utilize these transports to get some reinforcements. Not really going to stop the Russians, but really occupy them and slow them down to distract these units. And they just added a couple more infantry to Moscow and added a few more into Smolensk for the push from Poland by the Germans. And they're really focusing on getting these units. So they have all these units added up. They'll have about 60 units so far. And of course, as the turns go on, they'll add more and more. So they're going to pop out of Stalingrad at least 3 units a turn. And then the Germans are moving up the Corps Army. So that right now just left Paris and is in, they are right there. So next turn they'll be in Hungary and then ready for Ukraine the turn after. Because of the attack into Finland, and the Russians rolled really well on their income roll. They rolled a 20, so they went from 14 to 34. So one more good, another good roll, then they'll be pretty much on par with their 48. So not this round, but definitely the turn after, Russia will be ready to declare war. So that means Germany must act then. So it's going to be the invasion, or Barbarossa will be before the turn 5 that the Germans want it. So we'll see how that goes. There is a little bit housekeeping. The last video, I did say Italy was up to like 38 and UK was at 43. I accidentally took into account their bonuses when I did this. So I went back, subtracted that. So Italy is now at 34. The UK is at 46. The Americans are at 47. FEC is still at 20. China is down to 10. Australia is at 11. And Japan is up to 68. All right, so Italy, they did definitely go in, take out Greece. This is the German Air Force, which is all this. So they got pretty much bulked all their air power together. They did lose a tactical bomber on turn 1 due to anti-aircraft fire from Paris. So they'll need to replace that at some point. And the Italians just slowly building up their fleets, building a ship or two per turn. And they went ahead and produced in their new factory. The units that when it invaded these, they backed them up to protect that factory. The UK is kind of doing the same, so there's going to be a couple turns build up before a big battle to determine North Africa. Italy did lose Ethiopia to the UK, and then Somaliland will fall next round. These ships that are down in the South Atlantic, they're going to try to get up into the north, but there's no way they're going to get past these U-boats. So they're going to try to sneak back and join up with the FEC fleet, which, well, these guys ain't going to make it very much longer. The Japanese are going to come in here. They can't get enough ground forces. They certainly got enough planes and bombardments. They might make a run for this. However, all their bombardment sea vessels are going to be occupied in this fleet battle, so they won't be able to take part in the landing. I'm not sure if they have enough ground forces. They definitely got enough to take out this base and this base. So instead of producing FEC producing 6 units and the British adding 1 for 7 a turn to match the Japanese 3, and then anything that they can ferry down, they might make a strike here and here to get rid of these production facilities that can produce infantry. So instead of 7, they'll be down to 5 producing. So we'll see how the situation flows. The Japanese did come in, cut off the Burma Road. The UK came with 2 infantry and a fighter as retaliation. Everything got wiped out. Everyone killed each other. So the Japanese still hold it. So they need to get these infantry to defend that, to keep that road closed. China did see an opportunity. They had 4 veterans, a tank, a light tank, and artillery. So the Chinese went in with 6 infantry and their fighter, hoping to pick off 1 or 2 of these veteran units. However, the Chinese die roll didn't go as well as they hoped. They did take out the artillery and the tank. So that's something, especially the Japanese tanks are pretty expensive for what you get. So they typically don't build a lot. But they lost 4 infantry in the process. So I don't know if it was worth it, maybe. But they didn't get the veterans because they didn't want to risk taking a hit on that fighter. The Japanese did come in and really took out quite a few of these communist Chinese. So there's only 2 left. They're only collecting $1 a turn. So they're effectively a defensive force now. There's not really a lot they're going to be able to do. More likely, these 4 infantry and maybe a fighter are going to take this out. Their Japanese turn 3. They did produce so the start of their 2nd fleet, and so this fleet here is really going to be the fleet that's going to threaten the United States in the future. So they're going to slowly start building up a couple capital ships, get a couple Armado battleships, and support vessels as well. And this is pretty much their starting fleet. So this is their task to clean up the FEC, Anzac, and any straggling enemy vessels. And really, this is going to be the fleet that dominates the Asian seaways in the Pacific. Well, this newly constructed fleet will be the one going after the Hawaiian Islands and taking that from the Americans and, of course, the Victory City. Australia did come up. They were Carolina Islands. They seen there was only 1 infantry, so they came up with 2 with themselves and a bombardment. The bombardment missed, and mutual destruction with the 1 Japanese and 2 Australian infantry. So that's still, there's no ground force left, but it's still in Japanese control. So this is what the Japanese were afraid of, these pesky little attacks. So they might have to come over and probably this force here might make a run, take out these infantry if they can with a couple of bombardments. And this will also hamper the Australian production, as it'll take away a bonus and give the Japanese some more, little bit of extra money. So the Japanese plan is still the same. Slowly going methodically into China. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. They did produce a couple mechanized and artillery and per factory. So these two production facilities built on turn one. I pretty much do this anytime I play the Japanese, as I definitely see it worthwhile to get units into mainland Asia instead of having to produce them at home and then worry about ferrying them over. So instead of having to produce or buy new transports to do that, you free up your 5 starting transports to start taking out these islands. So that's pretty much the gist of turn 2. Anything that happened was pretty much expected. The British fleet that was up here came over to reinforce the Canadian transports. Canada is essentially just going to produce infantry or cheap ground units and transport every round. They do want to get about 10 to 12 transports in the Atlantic to help support the Americans, which will pretty much do the same as the game goes on. They'll get about 10 to 12 transports and do that chuck. So they'll send 6 over, 6 back, and continuously go back and forth once the German Navy has been dispatched. And this German Navy here, they're not really afraid of the Navy that the British has. The boats on the water are not really the threat because most of them are just transports. It's the Air Force. So like the German Navy can come park here in the English Channel, and then hopefully these guys would try to meet up. So these U-boats will go here, English Channel, the turn after, then they would form one fleet. However, as soon as these guys, this battleship and cruiser, a couple destroyers, as soon as they poke their nose out, the British Air Force is going to strike them and sink them before they're able to even meet up. So what this does is pretty much make these ships useless. As soon as they come out, they're going to get sunk. And it makes this whole strip right here pretty much a dead zone for either side. Which is good for the Germans because they know that essentially no landing is going to come into Holland or West Germany. The landings are safe to say the landings are going to happen in Normandy or Bordeaux. But if the campaign in Russia goes extremely well, then Spain might join. The last game, Spain and Sweden joined the Axis. So if that happens, then the British and Americans will probably enter Europe through Spain instead of France. But we will see. And the FEC did activate Iran. So they got a couple more units. Iraq added 1 extra infantry. Every 2 turns, we're going to add an extra infantry here. So they're up to 3. They're not activated yet, but the Italians might land a guy in Syria and then activate Iraq to then go to battle with Iran. Because this is a bonus for both UK and the Axis. So whoever controls this gets quite a bit of money. All right, so that's the rundown of turn 2. Stay tuned for turn 3. I expect turn 3 will be much of the same. Not really a lot of action, mostly build up, maneuvering, getting units into position. That's pretty much the problem with Germany. After their round 1, 2 impulse, taking out the countries that they have to take out, it's essential they take out all their objectives. But after that, then their units are out of position for the second and third tasks that they would have to continue on to win the game. So everyone's just building up, repositioning, doing a couple small battles here and there while they can. So turn 3 should be a little more exciting, and typically and I'm expecting Russia to be in the war at the latest turn 5, probably before then. And then the Americans are not far behind economically. They're already more than halfway to their goal of 80. All right. All right, so stay tuned for a recap of turn 3, and have a great day.